vetoed a bill that would have restricted the growth of an Hasidic village, Kiryas Joel. A group of concerns with ties to that village donated $250,000 to Cuomo's campaign. Now, nobody's saying anything is illegal here, but perception sometimes as important, if not more, than reality. Is this emblematic of how money and the money game works in politics from your perspective, right? We've seen it's not just limited to this. In some cases, people have gone away for buying a vote or whatever else, and I'm not making that implication here. However, why is the situation allowed to even exist where in Albany right now, it's perfectly legal if I'm going to take you out for dinner the night before you go vote, and I'm a lobbyist, and I'm telling you about how important my project is, that's completely legal, and you'll vote on my thing the next day. And I can contribute to your campaign.
Well, you can't take me out to dinner, though.
I thought I could take you out to dinner.
No, you could buy a meal up to $14.99.
I could take you to Arby's, okay?
Right,
but my point is, why is that even permissible? I mean, the public has a right to say that the optics stink and there's a appearance impropriety. Here, 250 grand, coincidence? Maybe it was, but it sure don't look good.
Look, one of the things that I think needs to be done generally is having a doing business list. Why should people have to look up who gave money to whom and whether those same people have contracts with the state and or applying for bids and for certain things? So I certainly think it should be easier, and people should know that they're going to be on that list. It's a very simple it's certainly not a solution, but it's a very simple tool that we should have in our toolkit. Look, generally, there's just way too much money in politics. We have to find a way to get it out. The Supreme Court has certainly made that harder. We're in a situation now where water finds its own level. Money is going to get in there somehow, and there's not really anything anyone can do. I mean, look, if you give someone money before they take a vote, that looks really bad. And if you give someone money after they take a vote, that looks really bad. So at the end of the day, we as politicians need to raise money in order to make a campaign. There's no real good way to do it, and so I think we need to take it down a little bit. We need to be creative in how we do that. Fortunately, there's zero conversation going on right now in Albany about any real campaign finance reform, and it's a shame.
Pull the curtain back for the public. Just how pervasive, first of all, it was when you were there, and it's even gotten worse since you left, about money and how it impacts legislation.
It doesn't impact legislation as much as it impacts the amount of time that legislators are spending on the job versus raising money. That's a lot of times in the past you had lots of hearings, members were at the hearings. Now they're told to raise money Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday when they're down in Washington. And there are booths that they go to in both the Democratic headquarters and Republican headquarters. And their staffs make them go and make them, call 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. What I didn't like about the campaign contributions, if I had a great supporter and they called me up about a case, I'd say, damn, now I got to give the money back and they can't contribute any. And I would tell them, I'm taking your case so you cannot contribute any money to me. Because you don't want that appearance. I mean, you don't want people to think you're corrupt.
And in a paradoxical way, the better a fundraiser you are, the more you raise, the less any one contribution matters to you.
Yeah,
so if someone just asked me straight up about what you mentioned in the intro, the governor's raised $30 million.
Why does he need 250 grand, right?
But my point is, I don't think that affects anything.
But
it looks that way.
We limited, you could only accept $2,500 from an individual. And, if you're raising $3 million or $4 million, it got to the point where I raised $500,000 my first race. The last race was $4 million. And I went to my staff and I said, how about if I take $2 million of it and set up a fund for urban kids so they can go? And I said, I'd much rather spend the $2 million that way. And they said, you can't do that because then you would be buying votes. And I'm thinking, that would have been a much better use of the money. I could have given a lot of kids, some money to go to school.
The PACs, though, and the Alex of the world, where literally...
But the PACs can only contribute $5,000. It's not that the money, it's that behind them is a whole group of people. When I decided 3 years longer than I should have to support vouchers in schools, the NEA, National Education Association, the CA came and said, we can no longer support you. it wasn't that I lost $5,000. It was that in front of every school was a sign from my opponent. And if it was taken down because it was on public property, there was a new sign put up. So all these parents who brought their kids every morning to school would see a sign coming into school when they left it.
But there are just too many ways for people to get money into these things. I mean, you've got super PACs behind the PACs now that can, as long as they're not coordinating, they can send a lot of money. In New York, we've got the LLC loophole, which doesn't, all you have to do is incorporate yourself as an LLC, and it explodes the amount that you can give as your unlimited cap amount, or as your for-year cap amount. Cuomo raised a ton of his $40 million that way, and one person can start multiple LLCs, or I can get other people to start LLCs.
That to me was a common sense solution. It passed the assembly and didn't go anywhere. I mean, that to me is it is not everything, but it's something concrete, it's substantial. We moved on it, and that was, that's the last.
But you're asking lawmakers in those cases to vote against their vested interests. Their vested interest is their ability to raise money so they can stay in office. How do you do that? How do you tip that scale? I guess it's the same question I asked last segment, but how do you finally get this group of lawmakers in Albany to vote against what has been their best interest?
I know, but nobody will do it. These guys would also have to say, okay, you know what? Make us work 10.5 months a year. Don't let us have a second job, but pay the guys enough so that they don't have to get a second job. Some of them have apartments in Albany. The public would have to spend $120, $135 grand a year to give these guys full-time jobs.
But then the legislator really want that job, and going to be more dependent on people helping to get elected.
And you're not stopping money during the electoral cycle.
It's never going to work. And the reason why it won't work, I mean, I understand your premise, but if for lack of a better word, if you're a crook before you're elected, do you think a full-time salary is going to stop you?
Except the only thing I'd say is, I'll let you finish. The only thing I'd say is it's more black and white at that point where you can't be getting the outside income.
But if I'm that crooked politician, do me a favor. My wife needs a job. Buy 1,000 copies of my book. Every loophole you can imagine, these crooks will find a way to get through.
What about fully publicly funded elections? Is that?
Well, we have that in Connecticut, and then they decided to loosen up outside money. I mean, that's the problem.
Andrew, the answer to your question is the only way it changes is when it's high enough on the public's list of interest that politicians have no choice but to listen. The king.
So now you're blaming us.
No, I mean, look, the king of everything that moves is public opinion. And at the end of the day, we've seen, in Nassau County, we had speed cameras. The public went nuts. The next day, we had no speed cameras. It was very simple. So if the public cares about this, if it's on the top of their list, then I think if it doesn't happen now, then when? People will have to respond to that. And until then, we're in a situation where the people are governing themselves get to vote on their own rules.
I don't know if there's time for one more question. There is the opportunity for a state constitutional convention coming up on the 17 ballot, I think, if enough people vote for it. Will there be an organized drive to make campaign finance reform or ethics reform a part of that and take it out of maybe the lawmakers' hands?
I think it's an open question. I know people involved in pushing that, and I think it's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
We found a good guy in Albany. All right, we're going to keep him around. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. When we come back here, we're going to pick the congressman's brain here as it relates to Iran. The United Nations today, they voted, to endorse the Iranian nuclear deal. We're going to tell you why the fact that they even vote on it is upsetting some pretty prominent members of Congress.
Besides that.